Our next consideration in sustainable design is maintainability, how you will maintain your landscape. Just a refresher, the 5 considerations of sustainable design are functional, maintainable, environmentally sound, cost-effective, and visually pleasing, and they are in that order of consideration. A maintainable landscape is really closely related to functionality. If a landscape functions well for you, maintenance will be easier. A maintainable landscape reduces the amount of inputs that you're going to put into that landscape. This can be not only water and pesticide and fertilizer, but also less equipment that's needed, less labor, takes less time, and in the long run, less money to maintain. And it also helps to conserve water as well. A maintainable landscape will help to improve plant and soil health and also water quality. Functionality and maintainability are closely related. So we have a maintenance problem on the left. You can see that water is flowing over the sidewalk. This can freeze in the winter and become a slipping hazard. And also, if you look along the edge of that sidewalk, you can see that the snow has been scraped off. So the equipment that they're using is not the right size for the sidewalk, and it ends up tearing up the grass every year. So one of the issues is then in the spring, the landscape crew has to go back out and reseed along the edge of the sidewalk. So what do you do about that? You redesign the sidewalk so that it fits the size of the equipment that's used to move that snow. And also remove any grass that's along the sidewalk. And that's what we've done in the solution on the right, in the picture on the right. You can see that we have mulched areas. The sidewalk has been re-poured. It's now the proper size of the type of snow removal equipment that's used, and that grass is gone, so there isn't even a risk. Even if the operator moves off the sidewalk a little bit, they're just going to scrape up some mulch now. So that's really helped. Most important, you can see off to the right, that black circle is a drain, and that is a drain for excessive water, so that water is not going to wind up settling on that sidewalk. Maintainable landscapes reduce extra equipment, like string trimmers or weed whips are also called. And here we have a maintenance problem on the left. In the larger picture, you can see that weeds have grown along the rock wall in this space. On the right-hand side, this is an excellent solution. So we've set the stones back into the garden bed and then created a really nice little, it's called a mow edge. And you can run your mower wheel right along that nice bed line there and just tuck it into that mulch, and it will take care of cutting the grass nice and tidy, but you won't have to come back with a string trimmer and then work your way around the boulders. Maintainable landscapes will eliminate these trimmers and also make mowing easier. Mowing is a big job, and whatever feeling you have about turf grass, we have a lot of turf grass in Minnesota. And so we want to make it as easy for people to keep it healthy and trimmed. And in this case, we have 2 solutions. One is a mow strip that's along the building, the brick building. You can see it's just a mulched area, kind of an out-of-the-way space, but you can easily just run your mower wheel right along that mow strip, and then you don't have to come back and trim. Another option is if you have fencing, like this split rail fence in the right-hand side, you want to put the posts inside the beds. And that really helps to eliminate, again, the need to come back and trim around those posts. Maintainable landscapes also avoid narrow turf spaces. A turf area should never be less than 3 times the width of your mower so that your mower can overlap as you move along the process of mowing. Larger turf areas are also less stressed by heat and drought, so that means better turf health, which means fewer weeds and thicker turf. And less string trimming is required when you have larger turf areas. So the picture on the right that shows the post in the turf, it's so close to being a much better little corner of a landscape. You can see that the mulched area comes up to that post, but it would be better to extend that mulch area and include that post in the mulch area so that you don't have to mow around it and you don't have to string trim around it. Landscapes that are maintainable also will help to reduce damage to plants and structures by locating trees and structures in mulched planting beds. The mulch helps to improve the tree health, there's less damage to the structure, and then there's less labor involved because you're not coming back with a weed whip and having to trim around trees or trim around posts. Mulch to eliminate damage as well will help to minimize maintenance in a landscape. We recommend 6-foot mulch rings and larger for evergreens because, of course, their branches are down closer to the ground and they reach out further beyond their trunk size. The mulch helps to eliminate compacted soil around trees, which improves the water percolation for those surface roots, and it will eliminate mower ruts from circling that tree round and round with your mower. The mower damage can happen when there's no mulch ring. This is a mountain ash, showy mountain ash, and it is not mulched. It's planted directly in the grass. And as we move in a little bit closer, you can see that it's got a big wound on the trunk. We know that that is not good for plant health, and it's happened from either a mower banging into that trunk inadvertently or a weed whip cutting into that tree. This opens up that wound for all sorts of pest issues. So this is a site that is very problematic, and we want to look at, first of all, what's the functionality of this site? This site was designed to be a bus stop, and it's clearly not a safe or functional bus stop. There's nowhere for people to stand. They wind up standing in the street, and that is not safe. So from a functional standpoint, it is not functioning correctly. And from a maintenance standpoint, it's really kind of a nightmare. We have grass that is overgrowing the curb so that it has to be cut away from the curb. The wall is in very poor condition, and the mulch is also pouring over the wall into the grass. And so altogether, this is a very bad example of, design, but a really good example of how function and maintenance are closely related. And as we've said before, you cannot maintain your way out of a problem. Below we have some evergreens that were planted in a bed covered with black plastic. The black plastic has prevented any water whatsoever from reaching the roots to the point where these plants have now died and will need to be replaced. Not very cost effective. We have a tree that was planted in a very narrow boulevard, and it has circling roots, so it was planted improperly. And for some reason, the person who planted it felt inclined to put black plastic edging around it in a very tight circle, so that edging is heaving out of the soil. It was not installed correctly. This is making it a very difficult site to maintain. And then we have extremely poor soil that's dry, compacted, and clay soil that is not allowing much of anything except weeds to grow in it. So amending that soil now will be very difficult. It is advised that we amend our soil before we do the planting so that the plants have a good growing bed to thrive in. Snow, ice, salt, and sand are 4 components of winter streets and sidewalks in Minnesota, and a lack of considering these elements is really a common mistake in design. It's critical in temperate climates like Minnesota that we consider what we're going to do with all the snow and the ice, salt, and sand during the winter. So it can really result in some functional and maintenance issues. In maintainable landscapes, we need to have a space for the snow to go and to keep plants healthy even through the winter. In the picture on the left, you can see that we have an evergreen hedge about 6 to 8 feet from the road. And between the evergreen hedge and the road, we have what we call snow storage. So this is an area, it's mulched, and it has herbaceous plants growing there. Yes, there's a tree, and yes, there's the rocks there. But all of those, including the herbaceous plants, can tolerate having snow piled up on them through the winter. The same as with the plants on the right-hand side, the driveway, And you can see that we have those evergreens are also about 6 to 8 feet from the driveway. And there's that space in between with mulch and herbaceous plants, in this case daylilies, for snow storage. So by having a place, designing an area where that snow is going to go during the winter helps to keep your plants healthy and unaffected by the snow, ice, salt, and sand. This is a landscape where snow, ice, salt, and sand were not considered when the trees were planted. And I can say this because this is my landscape, and that is my husband who is blowing snow. And you can see that we planted these trees too close together. This we planted many, many years before I knew anything about landscape design. We have a birch tree and 2 spruce trees, one which is failing, a white spruce, which you can see the trunk, and then a Colorado spruce, which actually is quite robust in this case. But you can see that we have a lot of difficulty moving large amounts of snow into that area. And so this is a consideration. If I was going to go back and do it again, I would not plant those trees there. I would plant herbaceous plants that would die back to the ground, and then I would have plenty of mulched area that I could dump all of that snow, ice, salt, and sand during the winter from the driveway. This is a really crazy picture because this is really about where will that snow go. Can't throw it on to the left on these shrubs because they're woody plants. There's no room with the fence to throw them either. So what are you going to do with that snow? You're going to have to shovel or blow it all the way to the end, and hopefully at the end of this fence there's somewhere that snow can be stored. Not a good design, not very sustainable. So go to the next presentation now. It's on environmentally sound considerations, maximizing our positive impact and minimizing our negative impact.